We all started by playing games at home, but over time, we know of all these big events happening all over the world, the Dream Hacks, the Rage from South Africa, and all these huge events, the ESWC. So that's where that's the bigger picture. We're just looking at getting to a point where we're able to organize and host such huge events in this part of the world where people from other regions could also come and participate in. And I think we are not so very far from there.
They told me not to be so arrogant on the intro when I have less subscribers than the math to the video. But funk that, let me be real for a minute. We've been here for years doing what we do cause we love it. We interview people from the game community. It doesn't matter if you're new or a huge celebrity. Like getting rid of Derek profile so you can hate me. Because the thumbs down is seriously stupid currency. Shows is smart, funny, and makes you think. Kills off most of our viewers with just a wink. We're here for you, all loyal supporters. I'm like Bernie Sanders, send me your nickel diamond quarters. We love our guests, except the ones that say no. I make too many intros for the Obsolete Gamer Show. That's right, sit back, relax, it's the Obsolete Gamer Show.
Welcome to the Obsolete Gamer Show. I am Jay LaRock, and today we're talking about the Ghana National eSports event, Playbox Gamers Fest. And what's great about being on Obsolete Gamer and talking to people around the world is with esports, being such a strong force today, seeing it all around the world is really what's important, because in America we see it on ESPN, we see millions of people watching it, coming from just back in the day with like twin galaxies and small arcades, and now millions of people watching it. But now seeing it across the world is something that we really haven't seen before. I mean, we see that in places like South Korea, but now it's spreading to places like Africa. And we're really happy today to be joined by Aaron Boateng, who is the founder and event coordinator for the Event Fest. And we're also joined by Isaiah TriForce Johnson, founder and CEO of Empire Arcadia. Thank you both for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having us on.
So about the event, what's really interesting about this is it's going to be, in Africa. So a lot of people, especially in America, are not familiar with the idea of esports being in Africa. Aaron, could you give us a little history about the Playbox Gamers Fest, and just about how it came about, what's it about, what that event is about in Africa?
Thank you for your question. First off, Playbox is being one of the main pioneers of esports in Ghana. We have close to about 7 to 10 events in a year. So what happened is, over time, while these events build up, we decided to have a major event end of year, more like a climax of these events. And that was how Gamer Fest was born. So every year, when we have all these number of games, at the end of the year, we try to merge everything together and have a major event. So it started off as a Playbox initiative, and has grown over the years, has grown to a point where we have all the different game houses, the major esports stakeholders in the country coming together to have an annual major gaming event. That's Gamer Fest.
So for most people in America, like I was saying, they didn't think of Africa being a place where you would expect to see a lot of gamers, a lot of esports. Could you just tell us a little bit of how that came about? Like, it's not, so it wasn't something for you like that doesn't seem strange to you. So it wasn't hard to get a lot of gamers together. Can you tell us a little about the gaming scene in Africa and your continent?
Okay, so yeah, it hasn't been much of a challenge starting Gamer Fest, because we have regular events in the course of the year. We have events like FIFA Holic, a lot of events. And what happens is, at the end of the day, we take people coming from all these events throughout the year. Then we hit them up. We call on them to pass through Gamer Fest. So I don't think it's much of it's not a new thing down here. Gamer Fest started since 2013. This will be the 3rd edition. The numbers keep increasing over time. So down here is nothing new. It's quite the usual.
So, TriForce, I know that we've spoken a lot about the growing esports community and about the esports, industrial esports revolution. Uh, with what you've seen it expanding just in, the global sense, can you tell us about this global esports initiative, especially about how it's expanded in Africa and your influence on it?
Well, the global esports initiative to pretty much, push esports all over the world has been going on for quite some time. The real issue here is the disconnect of understanding who knows what, and what I mean by that is esports in the EU in North America and in certain regions of Korea. These are the big areas in which esports is known for. But that doesn't mean that esports isn't in other areas of and other regions of the world, such as Africa, such as Latin America, such as the CARICOM, and so forth. They're esports is all over the place. And we're starting to understand that there have been esports tournaments in even Russia. There's been esports tournaments in the Middle East. There's been esports tournaments in Africa and so forth. And the whole point of the entire a global initiative is to create a network that allows where in the world to find out what's going on in their region or a foreign area of the world regarding esports. So we still have a way to go, but we're getting there in terms of having the whole global esports initiative, put together. Much like how sports is. When you look at sports, sports is being covered throughout the entire world by either ESPN or SuperSport, but the entire world knows the different regions of sports all over the world, whether it may be football, basketball, baseball, and so forth. So, for me specifically, my job is to try to go to these underdeveloped regions and underrepresented regions. And what I mean by underdeveloped and underrepresented, I'm talking about the industry of esports. I'm not talking about the actual countries and their developments, but these areas where no one really knows about esports, but there's something that's being done there, something that's being developed there. It's just not coming to fruition. So, my job is to go out there and bring that information to everybody as possible and help create a network where this information can be traded. And Ghana's Gamer Fest is definitely one place for me to start.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. It's hard to sometimes get the names out, to get that publicity out, because I mean, even in America, it's not necessarily has to be a black white thing, Asian thing, or anything like that, but sometimes it's hard to get certain communities to get that spotlight. Is that the same thing with countries? Is it just maybe just a skill thing? Is it that certain segments, they have access to more games, better computers, so they have more skills? Is it the same thing like within sports? Soccer, or football as it's called, you have more of that in other countries because it's easier to get access to, it's easier to have a football, so you learn that sport. Where in American football, you have to get the pads and everything like that. So you have more of those players in America than you would have the NFL in other countries. Would that be the same maybe in esports, where maybe you're not going to have all those players because it's harder to get those super gaming rigs, so that's harder to get that community? Would that be why maybe you haven't seen esports from other countries yet? Or is it just a matter of getting exposure and saying, hey, these other countries are doing esports too? Like, why would you say, is there a reason why maybe there's a lag from other countries, or just because maybe rich or poor? Is it simpler as that?
Well, don't want to take up too much of the time, but to answer that question directly, it has nothing to do with the resource. Plays an important part, but it doesn't play a detrimental part. It's about management. The region that you're in, it's all about how you manage things, because recently the industrial esports revolution has taken place, and prior to that, people managed to host gaming tournaments here in Jamaica before I even came down here. So, there's been tournaments that's been going on in Jamaica long before I got here. When I got down here, my job was to help develop an industry for esports because their community already exists. Just like me going to Africa, I'm not going to Africa to make esports. Esports existed in Africa long before I even get there, and this goes for any of these other regions in the world that are not known. The reason why the big three, which is Asia, the EU, and North America, are known for esports is because they have better resources. So this resource allows them to get their stuff on the TV, social media, and so forth. But that has nothing to do with the quality of an event or a competition that's held out in any particular region in the world for esports, because people will just, you can't put it online, but you can record it and upload it to YouTube. You can record it, you can take it and put together a video of some sort to help promote it. There are other ways. It may not be as great as the so-called first world countries or the more prominent regions in the world, but you can still get it out there. But it's up to the management on how they want to go about making that happen. So when you look at Aaron's Gamer Fest, the lack of resource, or whether or not he has the resource, has nothing to do with how he's going to run Gamer Fest. Gamer Fest is still going to be great. It's still going to help bring out more and more people out in his region. As he stated earlier, more and more people each year keep coming out, and that's because of how he's managing his particular esports brand. So if everyone takes a page out of Aaron's book and does the very same thing and focus on their esports brand and how they manage it and how they get it out to the public, everyone's going to eventually, it's going to naturally create its own network until the rest of the world finds out about esports in those particular regions.
And Aaron, is that what you found, that as you've expanded this, because I mean, this is not something new, like you said, you've been doing this for a while, as more gamers have come to your events, is it just word of mouth that people said, hey, this is a place where I can go and compete? Has it just continued to grow and you have more gamers come out and you've gotten more help from outside people? Or is it something that you've had to just continue to generate, from within, yourself?
Okay. So first off, the thing is, prior to Playbox, prior to our inception, people were already playing games in their homes. People were playing games online and all of that. So what we did was to create a platform for them to come out and express themselves. So funny thing is, prior to Playbox, we even had esports teams that were already meeting up and, sparring with each other. So what we did was just create a platform for them to come out and express themselves. And what happened is, once we set up that platform, we found more of them just coming out of the closet. So what happens is the numbers keep going over time. And it might surprise people, but within the short period we already started doing this, we've already got international. Last year, ESWC, Ghana was there. Ghana was in the FIFA competition. So I know most people out there think esports is new here and we haven't done much in the past years and all of that. But I mean, with infrastructure and resources notwithstanding, eSport is still happening here and it's growing by the day. So that's what's happening.
Now, as far as the type of games, because, like, I educate myself as I try and get other people as well. Is it the same type of games, like, FPS games, RTS games? Is there anything particular where, a group of players go towards one game over another? Is it the same widespread games that everyone else likes?
Ideally, the gamers down here play all sorts of games, all titles. But what happens is we have a more dominant community in sports and fighting games. Okay, so when you come down here, FIFA is a very prominent title here, mainly because we are a football nation. Ghana is prominent in soccer. I mean, we won the World Cup and all of that. So people tend to play more sports games. NBA, they play NBA, they play FIFA. And we also have a very dominant fighting game community. They play Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, they play Injustice a lot. So these are the two main dominant industries that we have here. We have other people playing, PC games, they have LAN parties and all of that. But so far with the esports scene, the sports and the fighting games have been more dominant.
So At the Playbox Gamer Fest, there's going to be this game, the India Assault Orient crossover, and what's really cool about it is it has something to do with Africa, and it's going to have like a character in it. Triforce, can you tell us a little bit about this? Can you expand on this a little bit?
Okay, so Orion is an original game created in Africa by African developers. Kyrio Games those are the guys that put the game together. It was featured on CNN as one of Africa's best games. It's a fantasy RPG. And so I'm working here in the United States with Imagination Vent. They're an indie development company, and they're working on developing a game dedicated for esports. It's a fighting game, team-based fighting game dedicated for esports. And they were looking to put characters in the game, and they were very interested in having characters from other games that exist, all original, to be put into the game as well. And I just thought it would be cool if Africa's first action adventure RPG from their game would be in the game. The character is called Enzo. He's a fighter. There are a lot of I've seen the game in motion from his original game, and I thought this would be a great character to put into the India Assault game. So I connected the two companies, Imagination and Kyrio Games, and the guys got together and they talked about it. They kind of liked the idea of having the character featured in the game, and then they came to an agreement, and they've been working on the character ever since. This is a great historic moment for Africa because it's a game that's being made in the West with an original African character that's being featured in the game to be played. And even more historic is that people will be able to demo the character at Gamer Fest. The game is still in its alpha stage, so but it will be ready for Gamer Fest this coming weekend, and Aaron can tell you a little bit more about that.
Okay, Aaron, can you tell us a little bit more about having a game like this? I mean, that's really cool because a lot of times, especially a lot of African Americans always want to see more people of color portrayed in games, and having an African character, portrayed and then being premiered at your event is pretty cool. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Okay, I mean, personally, I'm extremely excited about the idea, having an African character in an esports game. This game is going to be on PlayStation 4. It's going to be a top esports game, and we get to demo it first time in Africa at Gamer Fest. So personally, I'm really proud about that. But then, on the other hand, I feel it's a big motivation. It's a huge motivation and a huge step for African gaming because we are used to playing games with characters from the West, the whole time. All the fighting games, almost all the games we play have no African characters in there. So for the first time having an African character in an esports game being played on African soil, I think it's a pretty big deal. And a lot of people are really looking forward to it.
Now, for like people that like to get a view for it, because that's the thing, people see like different sides of like Africa. They see like the beautiful like savannas, and then unfortunately that they get like negative sides of it. We're learning about the esports sides. For like an event, can you walk us through like what's it like to be at like a Playbox event? Like when take us through like an event, a day at the event.
So originally Playbox started with an event called In the Box. Okay, so we usually have this event every weekend, and we have it in a party-like setting. We have it mostly in a pub. So there's music going on, you have your girls on the side, and there's gaming going on. And we usually have lots of celebrities passing through these events. So it's a fun-packed event where you get games, you have music, you find people dancing, you find people playing, beer pong on the side, and there's the video gaming. But what we noticed is it got to a point all the other games were lacking because everybody wants to play a video game. So what's going to happen at Gamer Fest is going to be a 3-day event. The first day we're going to have a symposium where we're going to talk about the esports culture in Ghana. That's the first presentation. Then the second one is going to be on Indie Assault. That I'm going to do personally. Then I'll demo the game. Then we have someone else talking on another esports aspect. So that's going to be in the afternoon. Then later on in the day, in the evening, we're going to have In the Box, which was something we already having. So we just invited the same old fans to pass through and have. So in the box is basically a gaming event in a fan atmosphere. So that's going to happen on the Friday. That's the launch date. Then on Saturday, we're going to start with the eSports. We're going to have the FIFA tournament the most part of the day. Then we have a brief intermission where what is going to happen is while the competitive games are going on, we also have a session for casual gaming. So when you get there, there's music, there's lots of foods, lots of drinks. Then you have people playing competitively in one side. You have other people playing casual games on a different side. There's going to be motion sensor games. There's going to be VR. Then there's going to be the actual competitive gaming. So that's going to happen for 2 days.
Nice. That sounds awesome. Now, I mean, what's great is that I'm learning along with everyone else that didn't know, and I mean, the potential of American esports market is huge. I mean, you have so many people in Africa, you have so many people that are interested in esports. You have this growing community. Like I said, you have people watching games like League of Legends, Overwatch on ESPN. You have the Playbox, you have the event that you're doing. It's growing. I mean, overall, what do you see of the potential just in Africa alone of it expanding, more people? Africa is a growing country. You have more people, getting prosperity, rising up. People want to play games. Young people want to play games. What do you see as the future and your part in it of trying to expand esports?
Yeah, I believe there's a lot of potential here because looking at the numbers since we started up to this point, you can tell there's a huge growing market. One thing I would want to emphasize is that most of our events as Playbox, we are in the capital, Accra. So most of our events take place in Accra. And you have people calling from all other regions who want to participate in your event. This year has been an extremely good year for esports and the gaming scene because we have some telcos, telecom companies getting on board because they all see the huge potential and they want to use that in selling products and just getting product placement and brand placement on our events and all of that. So there's a growing scene. This year there was an event in Nigeria where most Ghanaians moved all the way to Nigeria. You see lots of events happening in Senegal and all over. Initially there used to be mainly Playbox, in Ghana. You don't really hear much of events in West Africa, but you can see the growing number of events going on, and I think it's just the beginning. It's just the beginning because what is happening is people tend to see what is happening here and they emulate. Okay, so I happen to have contacts with people in other African countries similar to Playbox who are also organizing events. I mean, I just got to know them this year. When they saw what I was doing, then they reached out. So once you get yourself out there, you realize there are more of these things going on with very little exposure. So I think the main challenge here is exposure, where we have events, where we have live stream, where we have, we have our videos uploaded onto YouTube where people could go out there and watch. I think then people would get realized that what is happening in Africa. But I think there's a huge potential here, very huge potential.
So, go ahead. No, that's actually, I was going to just ask you to expand on that. Like, as far as you, TriForce, was there something that you saw that, there was maybe like a untapped? I mean, obviously, it's not like I said, it's not like this is brand new. Africa was already doing esports, but obviously it wasn't to the fact where everyone knew it was going on. People are so focused in like Asia, in Europe, in America. So unless you're like really plugged in and you're like checking every news, you're thinking it's here. I mean, look, obviously in America, you can put blinders on, but what is it going to take for people to really know that it's all over? And what did you see where you said, hey, I want to go over here and be part of this, like what you're doing in Jamaica and now in Africa?
Well, I have a more intimate understanding of the true total history of esports, just even in the United States, because the United States has really created the whole culture and community for esports with Walter Day and Twin Galaxies back in the 80s. But it wasn't until 2012 when I decided to leave the United States and go back to my home country, Jamaica, due to my mother's passing. That made me realize that there was, an opportunity outside of the United States other than, you know, the UK and the Asians, such as Korea and Japan. And I started to educate myself on their history in esports and their culture. And it's like a nationality or you know, an actual real culture. Every different region has different aspects to it. When I started to grasp this and started to understand this, it was about, okay, how could we get this all globally tied into a big knot so that we can all play? Because that's when you really look at esports, that's the ideal. Gaming as a whole is to connect everybody in the world. So how can we create an initiative globally for esports that connects everyone into the world? Well, we have to go to these different regions, see where they are, and help develop them so that they can join the areas in the world that has already moved forward in that. When you're speaking about Africa specifically, I look at it no different from like in the Caribbean. In the Caribbean, they have something called the Caribbean Esports Alliance, or I think it's Alliance Association, but it's the CEA. And the CEA is a multitude of different Caribbean islands that are all connected together to create a network, or like a federation, so to speak, that uses the entire Caribbean to have a network of competitive games and stuff like that, so it can flesh out its esports infrastructure. There's no difference with that in Africa. There's no difference with that in America. In America, the fighting game community does that. You have different states that have different fighting game tournaments and brands, from NEC to Final Round to CEO to TFC and so forth, and a whole bunch of them, that creates this big network that that funnels into their championships, which in the middle of the year is Evolution Worlds, right? So that's the World Fighting Game Championship. So when I look at that and I look at CEA and I'm looking at Africa and I'm like, you know something, every area can just do the same. It's the same tried and tested, you know, model that actually works. So Africa could come up with its own esports federation. As Aaron pointed out, you know, there are other people in Africa that are actually working together. They're all doing their own thing. They're just connecting. It's about building that network. You build that network, and then Africa will get at the same level as the United States, as the UK, as Japan, as Korea, as any place. This is, like I said before, it's not necessarily about the resources, it's about the management, getting the right people in the right places to do the right job to get it there. In terms of resources and finance, all of that stuff can be given, sponsored, or invested. So you set up the proper infrastructure. A businessman sees where he can make money, he's going to invest. He's going to get you the proper tools. A huge area in Africa that's developed in a kind of first world status of esports is South Africa. Johannesburg, they have the the Digital Gaming League, the DGL down there. Those guys, they're sponsored by, I think it's Telcom and so forth. And they have a whole bunch of people that go there and compete. They had the Rage convention expo there and so forth. They had esports involved. And if South Africa can do it, then the other 54 countries in Africa can do it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. This is not about an issue of resources. It's about getting the right people to do the right job. And guys like Aaron, guys in Kenya like Nathan, guys in other regions of South Africa like Kofi, and there's a bunch of these other guys that are all doing their own thing, and we're all networking to kind of form an African esports federation. So the future for Africa in esports, the potential and its future is massive. And you guys are going to hear about it shortly. So stay tuned on that one.
So Aaron, last question. Is there like a goal overall that you would have for Playbox and GamerFest that you're looking for, like I guess achievements that you're hoping for?
Oh, okay. So first off, you know, we all started by playing games at home, but over time, we know of all these big events happening all over the world, the DreamHacks, the Rage from South Africa, and all these huge events, the ESWC. So that's the bigger picture. We're just looking at getting to a point where we're able to organize and host such huge events in this part of the world, where people from other regions could also come and participate in. And I think we are not so very far from there.
Okay, excellent. Well, I mean, we plan to put all this information so that you can learn more about Playbox Gamer Fest on our comment section so you can check this out. But I want to thank you, Aaron and TriForce, for coming on and talking with us today. It was very informative, and I learned a lot today.
Thank you for having us on for Obsolete Gamer. I would definitely want to give us a special thanks to our sponsors, which is Catalyst Mints, our supporting Guinness World Records. These guys are always supporting us. I also want to give special shout outs to Walter Day. I want to give shout outs to all the guys in Africa, Aaron, yourself, and everybody else of African Esports Federation that are pretty much trying to bring into fruition here. And definitely want to let everybody know, tune in on Friday around 12 o'clock in the afternoon, East Coast time. That'll be when Gamer Fest will be fully into motion, and you guys can take a look at what's going on in certain parts of Africa for esports, because Africa is going to be put on the map this year. So thank you.
So first off, I would want to give shout outs to Empire Arcadia. They've been very supportive. I mean, the founder, TriForce Johnson, has been very supportive since day one. You know, he got us the contact with in the Assault and all of that. So we're very grateful. I also want to give shout outs to iSpace Foundation. That's the location for Gamer Fest. I want to give shout outs to Alistair, Virtual Union, Rock Radio, Pelo App, and our main sponsor, Loose Pay.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us. Bye.